paradox because how does a party become something internal before it's like an external event?
My favorite question. First of all, the word party is a paradox. If you trace the etymology of it, party kind of comes from partir. It's like to split off, right? And we think of like a legal party, or a hunting party that's splitting off
Yes.
from a group, right? And we have this idea that party is about get-togethers, but it starts from a split, right? So there's almost something exclusive about a party or separating, but it creates a feeling of belonging, or it should. And that a party is it's special, it's a celebration, or it's something naughty or dirty, or maybe it's an escape. But the idea that there's a party within us, that there's this part of us that wants to split off and be an individual, but also wants to feel that belonging and wants to create that within us. I help people think about what can create that for the context in your life.
Yeah. I see also the party as something that's um yeah, like a different part of um like the context.
What's
I'm
your
wondering
relationship
about
to partying? Yeah, like what's the
yeah,
last
it's
great
funny
party you've
because
been to? Yeah.
I actually had a friend who was in town recently, and we kind of had the opportunity to party, but it isn't something that we ended up doing really. It was more of a quiet, relaxed, like fireside vibe, really,
Hmm.
and it has gotten me wondering, like if people are still I mean it was more of a mindset I had when I was younger, you know, going out
Hmm.
clubbing. That is what I always considered to be a party. But in another sense, it could be, I guess, being a party coach, do you notice that people have maybe a different concept of the party that maybe helps or doesn't help them socialize in different contexts?
Certainly. Uh, I noticed this because I worked in like raves and the music industry and around a lot of people that were partying a lot. And for myself, I couldn't leave the party, right? I'm the person who would want to party for 3 days or a
From
week on end.
before it starts to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
after it ends.
yeah. And so for me, my journey was really based on a lot of negotiating my own alcohol and substance use combined with what was I really seeking at these parties, while at the same time noticing a lot of my friends. I come from a quite like nerdy intellectual background. I went to a college that's known as where fun comes to die, where a lot of us were in the libraries on
Not the
Friday and
official motto, I hope.
not the official motto, but part of that was, we'd spend our Fridays and Saturdays in the library. And I also love that. And there's something there. But I notice a lot of people, I'm in my late 30s now, feeling this disconnection either from themselves or from humanity at large and the things that used to work for them, whether that was the way they used to party or the way they're connecting online or how they're showing up for their friends, that something felt like it was missing. There was this gap between how they felt like they deserved to show up in the world and what was actually happening. And so I just I can't explain it, but I feel like whatever universe gifted or cursed me with this obsession with partying and hedonism and Apollonian Dionysian dialectic, how do these ideas of an ordered, balanced life versus giving over yourself and your ego, dissolving the ego into a crowd, is that a part of being human? Do we need that as humans? Does everyone need that? Do we not? I don't know. But as opposed to wellness culture and therapy culture, that I feel like a lot right now is, you know, offering maybe optimization of our lives. I'm trying to offer something a little messier that maybe feels a little more real and that you can find that at the party.
Yeah, I notice also parties, on one hand, there's like the sense of awe and wonder that comes from being in a crowd, a large crowd of
Mm.
people. And
Hmm.
on the flip side of focusing on something that is external but that's happening simultaneously to like the crowd of people. So I was wondering how you've noticed, I assume, like a lot of different behaviors at parties. If there's a, I don't know, a recurring theme that people come to you for, if it's maybe are they lacking that sense of wonder and awe, or are they lacking maybe internally they want to grow in confidence, or is it a sense of loneliness? If there's any of those kinds of themes that you've noticed from the people that come to you and the people that you speak to.
Great question. So a word that's coming up for me that people maybe don't have a term for is that wonder and awe is a collective effervescence. I think Durkheim, the sociologist, coined that.
Yeah,
This idea of a this kind of wonder that we get when we're in a crowd and we're turning ourselves over to that. I don't know. Do you have experiences or memories of when you've experienced collective effervescence?
I think raves are a good example of collective effervescence. I I think to a certain extent clubbing is as well. I think the difference is kind of in the, maybe intensity is not the right word, but I I think it captures some of that like some of the difference in a sense that, yeah, I think it depends on, I mean, the fact that, techno music at raves is usually not something that's vocal. There's usually not that much of a vocal component can
Hmm.
play into that as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this actually, because I feel like you'd have spoken to a lot of different people who, so you'd be able to capture that.
Yeah, and I don't think we can point to one specific thing, but a very common refrain is as we've invited the social panopticon into our lives, that we are always
Absolutely.
monitoring ourselves and monitoring each other, capitalizing on that experience to validate the experience having happened, creates that collective effervescence. We maybe get germs of it through our algorithm of we're like absorbing the very cheap versions of it as we engage in these algorithmic mobs of seeing viral or going viral. That one cheapens the experience of actually being there, or makes it that we're not able to truly like let ourselves go in those places because of this feeling of being watched or being in this place. And so I do hear that from people, especially younger generations. I more specialize in millennials, but I have a lot of Gen Z people that are in my comments and asking me, did you guys really, you know, party without cameras? And what was it like to not be watched all the time? And they're very curious about that experience. And I'm starting to see more. I am seeing a resurgence of the Dionysian, a rebellion against some of these things of no phone parties and an analog lifestyle. And it's starting to feel more natural for a certain type of person. And this is one of the things that in my coaching program, one of the first things I have people do is a social media detox, a stepping away from. It's the first thing a party coach has you do is go spend 3 days in silence. And
Which,
it's
yeah,
very difficult.
is
Yeah, it's very
hard to
difficult for
do.
people to do. Yeah, yeah.
It's
But
true
what
that the
people find,
effect
yeah,
of,
go ahead.
sorry, please go ahead. As the
No,
effect of
I'll just
being
offer
watched,
what people find. Yeah, yeah. What people find in that silence, and what I find too is I miss being watched or watching. you know,
yeah, it's the
and
phenomenon
and
of participation also.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
watched, like in a sense, silence is the non-participation and non-enactment, or you're still, it's enactment, but it's not participation. Whereas,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, being like engaged, fundamentally, it means like, I guess, being watched in a sense, because you're involved in something that's outside of yourself.
Yeah. And I often get asked, what is my definition of party? And I think for a time I was interested in a redefinition of the word, but I really try to step back. I don't want to redefine terms for everyone or try to change discourse on
What
that.
is
But
the original definition then, and where are you trying to lead the discussion towards?
yeah, well,
Would
why this
be,
came up is you mentioned participate, right? A participant versus a spectator. I think we would all agree that whatever definition of party used to exist, like participation was inside of that, right? Like even a kid's birthday
yes,
party is a participation. I will note that I'd say in the last maybe 50 years, there are some ways in which party has started to mean if I buy a 24 rack of beer and an 8 ball and I go home and I rip that up, I'm partying if I'm by myself. And I don't know if I would call that partying, right? It's consuming has become somewhat synonymous with partying, and maybe you are participating in a frequency change, but I would just ask people if you really believe in your soul and your heart, if that's what partying is to you. If you believe that you are participating in the life that we've been given here, if you are like consuming by yourself, or the consumption is purely the participation instead of participating in something that is more collective.
yeah, I had associated it with the collective. I guess
Mm-hmm.
also going back to the etymology, party, so it has to be a part of a collective, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
participating in that.
Yeah, so I would just offer that to people. And if you're going to a party to spectate, to take a video of your favorite DJ and you're there to purely to spectate, are you truly partying, or are you merely a spectator? Are you participating, or are you spectating? And the party
And
within,
yeah,
going
would you
back to your
think,
first question, is the party within is a belief or of a identity of becoming a radical participant in our own lives, of finding that
right?
participation within. Yeah.
What do you think creates like a meaningful connection, or a yeah, like a meaningful relationship between two people, and how is that built?
This is an interesting one too, because I think fun is great, but for anyone listening here, I would invite you to think back on your meaningful relationships. Many of them involve friction. They involve conflict. Even if you had fun when you went through the conflict together, so some of my tightest groups of friends, we were stuck in a traffic line going into a festival. It was like 12 hours of traffic, and we didn't get to the festival, but we had to literally party in our cars as we slowly got up. But we ran out of drinks and food, and we had to go find other friends, and we were sleeping on the roof of the car. But that conflict created trust and bonds between those people. Whereas I've been a lot of good vibes parties, and especially a lot of the new age spirituality and wellness, and there's just these they're effervescent without the collective. they are they're shiny, glittery things without the friction that creates the meaning for a lasting relationship. So I'd say this is not universal, but I would invite anyone to listen to this. Think about your meaningful friendships and relationships, and most of them, at least for me, can be traced to conflict that we went through together.
Yeah, I think going through tough moments with another person is definitely a hallmark of like a long-standing relationship. And I mean, the word trauma bonding I think comes up pretty often, and it is like it does have the ring of truth to it. I'm wondering if that's a term that you use, or if you have any thoughts on that as well, because I've always been
I'm very careful
I've heard
about
it around. I
trauma.
just
Yeah, I'm careful about trauma. I'm not like trauma certified, and when I bring people in, I say if you have serious trauma or you're there, like this is not the place for that. I'm more of an exposure therapy coach, right? And I'm here to be in the present and the future. I'm not here to root up the past. That being said, the I think one of the powerful things about partying, why drinking and drug use becomes such an important part of people's partying experience, is because they allow us to be messy, to screw up, to do things that maybe our ego self in our, you know, even our sober non-social panopticon that we're all monitoring each other, that parties allow this place for us to go deeper and be a little messier, and that creates trust. If drinking culture, especially, I travel to China a lot, and most deals are done around a lot of heavy drinking, and it creates this trust of seeing people behind this mask. And I went over there when I've had long stints of sobriety. I was like about a little over 2 years in of like not having a drink, and I was over there, and I was never tempted, but they were very suspicious of me not picking up the drinks
not
with
yeah.
them. Yeah, and there was a trust that maybe I I ended up the way that I compensate with this is I get them to get hot sauces, and I'm like, let's do your hottest sauces, and we get those around the table. We do shots of the hot sauce, and they thought this was hilarious. And we are still engaging in an act of trust, and we're all everyone is spitting and we needs to get to drink it down. And so alcohol itself is not a necessity. We've created an idea that this is the thing that does it, but doing something that is uncomfortable, trauma bonding, careful using that term, but doing something that is somewhat in that vein is fun, and it builds trust.
Yeah, I think that's a shining example of party coaching. And I'm curious if you have like a really method that you follow, or how do you coach a kind of social environment, a social context? If we could go a little more deeply into that as well, and if you have any, what your usual way of doing things are, and how how you get people to follow that path more deeply as well.
Beautiful. So first of all, I want to acknowledge, while I bill myself as the world's first party coach, and as far as I can tell, I've done a lot of research, and I've not found anyone else, even throughout history, that is used partying itself as the mode for teaching. But want to very much acknowledge that I pull from so many mentors and teachers, and very similar processes that you might find in alchemy or executive coaching, or even the 12 steps of recovery. It pulls from a lot of these things that are essentially moving through three things. One is a clearing out, right? Let's clear out what we think about our past. Let's listen to that. Two, figure out, what does my present need? How do I generate and create a more sustainable energy in the now? What does that look like? And ultimately, how do I give this away? Because the only sustainable way to exist is to not think, what can I get out of this, but is to give away what you have been given by this process. And so that's what the party win really is about, which is a shift from a self-centered, what can I get out of the world, to my world becomes better and more connected once I create a life that I don't have to escape from, and I can give away feelings of belonging or connectivity to anyone else that is potentially in my path. So to dive into that, I might ask, yeah, where are you with? You said you had a quieter, night the other night. what do you feel like anything is missing in your social life, or what feelings do you have around partying these days?
So yeah, I feel quite whole. I think,
Mhm.
for a while, my social life, I think during high school was probably not that exciting, and I was more of a reader, more of a the
Mm.
quiet guy in the back, just in it, lost, or not lost, but lost a little bit, wandering in the forest of my own thoughts, and
Mhm.
slowly, um, especially like I think it has to do with finding your place in the world, um, spiritually or even physically. Like being in Montreal was, I think, key to developing and settling in. Being where you want to be, I think, was
Mhm.
one of the main things, and settling into that and becoming a little more outgoing, a little more confident, a little more self assured, which were all things that took time to develop,
Mhm.
and just put, like you said, exposure therapy, I think, is really important for navigating your fears, and putting people in front of those fears and forcing them to face those fears is, yeah, something that can help largen their social horizon, and
Mhm.
yeah, put themselves out there.
Yeah, and I get a sense from you of just talking to you that I don't claim to like read energies or anything, but I get a sense that you seem pretty aligned with how you're showing up in the world, which is cool. I will say for
Thank
anyone
you.
listening to this, yeah, for anyone listening to this who maybe doesn't feel that way or feels FOMO or
I thought
you know,
the steps, the mix of energies that you described, your process was a fantastic way to start to be in that state. And
Mhm.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the dogs also agree. So that's
Yes,
always a good
yeah,
sign.
yeah. But
But
yeah, I'll
yeah, I was
briefly just
wondering.
say, yeah, it just reminds me of Arnold Schwarzenegger says pretty much everything in life has lessons that we can find in the gym, which is that there's going to be some people that are genetically born, they walk in, they've already how to grow the muscles, but they still have to start with reps, progressively overload those reps over time, and we grow into those things. And no matter who you are, where you are, if you're missing an arm or a leg, or you have some sort of thing, small reps over time
Yeah,
develop
absolutely.
growth.
I was wondering
And so,
also in terms of, um, a single person. Sometimes there's this like shift, or people describe, this person came in and I felt a shift in the energy of a room. Is that something that you've noticed, or do you think that's even possible? That really, maybe it's just an individual experience that you maybe have a particular connection to the energy of that person. Do you have any thoughts on that, you know,
yeah,
phenomenological experience,
this
kind
is
of?
one of my favorite parts of coaching is when we get to this point where I have people doing something in the middle of the cycle. I call it a wellness bender, and it's a 21-day habit challenge that includes complimenting strangers and calling your friends and like literally complimenting them or just thanking them or asking them questions. But sometimes people need a little coaching on this, and I ask them,
All of
what do
those.
you yeah, what do you want to feel more of in the world? Maybe it's connection, maybe it's belonging, maybe it's authenticity, but start to think of questions that you can ask people that are, and this is where we get a little woo woo, but you become a portal for those experiences to come through. Because what a lot of people start to notice is they're the person who always is like, how's work or how's the weather? And if you're somebody who's constantly creating a portal for people to bitch about traffic or the weather or work, you're going to be receiving that energy, and not just on a spiritual sense, like just literally the words that are being spoken to you and what you are making other people feel when you talk to you is directly related to the questions you ask them and what you're open to that. And I think what you'll start to notice if you see charismatic people is that it's not so much that they're even shining a light, but they make you feel like you can let certain energies out around them. You know, they have that energy of like, I can feel that person who gets on the dance floor first, who's maybe a little goofy, is creating that space for you to feel a little bit that. The person who is grounded and intellectual and sees that person sitting at the wedding who maybe doesn't want to dance but goes over to them and starts a conversation and said, hey, what are you reading lately? And opens up a place for that person to connect about what they're reading. That is a very powerful and, in my opinion, a very valid way to be at a party. And some days I'm the intellectual sitting in the corner with grandpa talking about what I'm reading. And some days I'm dancing, the first person on the dance floor, being there. But the letting people know that you don't have to be one thing. Maybe one thing feels authentic, it doesn't. But it's okay to perform. As Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage, men and women merely players. There's a lot of talk about authenticity, and it's okay to try. Parties used to be masked. People would wear masks at parties because they wanted to be someone else. It's fun. Go escape into something else and try it on. And you might find out that by trying on a costume, by trying on a different version of yourself, a real self that's been maybe a little hidden underneath is there as well.
Yeah. How much
Sorry
how
about my
much of
dogs.
no worries at all. That bringing the party to us. How much do you think that perception of self shapes how you interact with the party? How do you think the perception of self shapes social life and yeah, how you interact in a party?
So the way that the self affects social life, it's influenced by so many things, right? We have, the culture that you're growing up, and some states or cultures have a more tribal family version of partying, right? Where they are expected to show up in certain ways for the family. We had kind of like the suburban, 20th century of, parties were something that was done in backyards and basements and eventually made their way to the clubs. And you trace it all the way back to Greek society where they would, well, if you look in the 18th century, one, people were just drunk all the time. Like people didn't drink water. Like the
Oh, people
founding
used to
fathers
drink
were
a lot
yeah.
more.
Yeah, they would drink so much more. Everyone was just constantly high on everything. In the 18s, there was like 60 years where everyone was on cocaine in the 1850s, since the 1900s. And so substance has been a part of this. But to answer this idea of how does the self fit into that today, I don't think we can get away without talking about social media. And I think there is a value that we put on being able to show up socially in a way that will perform well in that social media world. And I think it's both good and bad. Everything has trade-offs.
I would say it's even
But
increasing the value
yes, yes.
and continues, yeah.
And yeah, and perhaps, we'll continue to see a luxury value on in-person events where you can be seen in these places as our AI avatars take over, and pretty soon everyone's AI agents are talking to each other. Who knows? Who knows what will happen there? But this is a long way of answering. I think we're at a really cool time where while it might feel difficult, there's actually so much freedom and liberty to make social life, to make showing up socially right now, to make it what you want to mold it into. People are desperate for that. They all feel like they're missing this thing. And so the party within is actually an invitation. I'm trying to trick people into creating their own parties, throwing their own events, creating instead of being like someone else is going to solve this problem. The only thing that ever changed the world is one person at a time, people doing things differently in their own lives. And so that's kind of my invitation for people is stop being a spectator, participate in what you want your social life to look like. Because we got rid of the gatekeepers, we got rid of all of the things that used to prevent us from sharing our art, from sharing what we did. Like, it's free distribution of anything that you want to put into the world. We have technology here now to do this. And instead, people are spectating and disappearing into scrolling. And that's my invitation is be a participant.
How do you think social media has kind of reshaped social life? I think that is one example of it, but do you think there's, I guess, other ways that social media has impacted and continues to impact social life? You talked a little bit about the panopticon, about surveillance as well, and kind of the positive element of controlling distribution, in a sense, being able to create. And I think those are all fantastic points, actually. And yeah, answering that question.
Yeah. I'll keep going on the positives. The empathy, either real or performative, that we now have for someone living across the world to see content that they're making and to feel like this person is in my living room and that the global policy affects this person as much as it does the person who's suffering on the street right next to me. Now we get into the negatives of has it made the global world smaller while we ignore our neighbors down the street? These are all wild trade-offs that social media brings into our lives. The people that are all at Coachella, going back to Coachella weekend 2 this week. I know people that literally they have lists of influencers that they watch to go to Coachella. They experience the festival through these people that are going on these trips. And is that any different than, reading Hunter S. Thompson's columns in the 70s and the 80s, as he would go on these experiences? There's a new way that we are developing parasocial relationships with people on social media. But I will say, as I talk to people across all ages and spectrums, very few of us remember the nights that we stayed in scrolling, watching somebody else experience something. And every time that I made the sometimes tough choice to drag myself off my couch, to go alone, or to vulnerably ask a new person that I met, hey, do you want to go hang out next weekend? I've almost never regretted that.
Yeah. Do you think in those contexts, is it people are being afraid of rejection, or is it a deeper fear that kind of hinders that putting yourself out there?
Yeah. Would you say that was that a part of your journey? Did you have a fear of rejection?
I think so. I think the fear of rejection maybe is in itself a symptom of a deeper fear of not belonging. I think, part of it is community and feeling like you belong, like a deep need of every individual being, and it's not necessarily something that's driving a fear of being rejected, but it's innate in a sense that you have to grow to encompass those attitudes and beliefs to connect in a meaningful sense.
Yeah, and this comes back to the paradox that we opened with, which is I do believe that it's easier for humanity now to experience belonging without an out group and an in group, but we have a lot of evidence across spirituality, politics, economics, psychology that says it's quite difficult to feel belonging unless we have something to measure that belonging against. I am this, but I'm not that. Right? And so I think that's okay. And whether whether it needs to be an enemy or if we can love the other tribe and be like, but I'm just not that tribe, I'm this tribe. We experience this in at its best college sports, right? Where different colleges experience the the fandom of that college, but you don't really hate the other college, but hopefully not. But there is a pretty, there's really no difference between these basketball teams of the cultures. There might be slight differences, but we're essentially creating these in groups and out groups that are fun. They're play. And so I believe that the future of social life hopefully starts to look a little bit more like that, but not like everyone belongs and let's create something where every single person is invited to the party, because I've seen so many people try to create event series and groups and places like that they crumble and they dissipate because there is no sense of an in-group out-group. If everyone's invited, it very quickly deteriorates into, well, why am I even here?
I'm also curious about the culture of free party. Is that something that that you feel like you belong to, or is that a net positive, something that you see yourself promoting? And just
So
I've seen
you mean
a
free parties as in
resurgence,
economically free?
as in just I think my understanding of free party is a culture of being able to set up a booth and have a party in a space that's out of the way. So I was curious about your thoughts on it, having worked in raves and party culture. If what your thoughts are about
Yes.
that.
Yeah. I love these, and I'd love to see these things sort of be reinvented from first principles every 20 years or so. Um, we are seeing a lot of clubs close. The model of escalating bottle service and covers just not working, and so we're seeing a lot of younger generations in Chicago here. There's these pop-up groups that literally rent U-Hauls, put speakers in the back, and they'll like drive around until they find a parking lot, and on social media they'll drop a pin and say, hey, come here, and people rush to the party and they dance until it gets broken up or whatever it is. But and sometimes people join into that, but what you notice is that even those free parties are creating identities, whether that's around the music they like or just the expectations of behavior at that party. There are usually pretty clear instructions on this is how we behave in this environment. And so I'm very pro those things. But there is I've seen a lot of people trying to create these hybrid like community models that it's free or donation based, and we're going to have yoga and raves and parties, and these things last 3 to 6 months and they die out because it's really hard to get people to keep showing up and sustain something if for lots of reasons. But it doesn't seem to be a model that is sustaining groups very well.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. I'm wondering also what does a great party feel like? Is it, and yeah, what makes a party a great party?
Yeah. So again, this is where I would go back to, history of what makes music great, what makes art great. There are virtues and aesthetics that have a long history of making this thing feel great. I will share what that is for me, but the same way that even though I'm a classical musician, I love the Chicago Symphony, I love, Beethoven or Mahler, there's probably 50-60% of the population thinks that's shit. They don't, even though it's great art, they don't understand it. They haven't been educated on why that is great, right? So I'll share what I think is great based on my history of being around this a lot, but also that there's a lot of people that a great party is going to be a 6-pack of beer on a Tuesday night with their buddies in a garage, and that's okay, right? That if that to
Intensely
them is
subjective.
yes, yeah. But to me, a great party is a temporary frequency shift that dissolves the ego with a
That's a
group
great
of
answer.
people. Yeah.
Yeah,
So for me, I need that frequency shift, that my ego is being dissolved, that I'm being challenged to not be my buttoned up self, that I feel like I can be a little messy with these other humans. And that dissolution of ego usually leaves me, even if I was drinking or whatever, it's like I feel energized the next week after that because I had some sort of a shift in my spirit that made me feel more human. So that's my personal opinion on that. I think that's why the best raves and festivals and even I've gotten to spend some time in some higher society, and they throw really good parties, but they reach this point where even the most buttoned up people in the party are turning up or turning down, however you ever want to declare it. If there's this frequency shift where their egos that they brought outside of that are dissolved inside of that party.
yeah. Is there kind of a moment that you've seen someone transform that really stuck with you that you could share, where just they shifted completely?
I'm always cautious to talk too much about Burning Man. Are you familiar with Burning Man at all?
I have heard of Burning Man. Yes.
Yeah. So for those listening, it's a 10-day experience in the Nevada desert. I won't call it a festival. It's not. It's literally a city that's built. 60,000 people show up. They show up months in advance to build, but during these 10 days, there's an experience, and I've had the opportunity to attend twice in a very drunken psychedelic state and 2 times completely sober. And I've been able to attend some meetings for sober people there who are maybe attending a festival or something like that for the first time without being on substances or alcohol. And at sunrise, sometimes people skydive into the festival. So they're literally skydiving down as we're dancing at sunrise. And I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. But I watch these people experience what they never thought that they could get without something in their system. The adrenaline, the feel of like we are so human in this place together, and they're crying and they're dancing, and to describe it is cheesy. It destroys it for me to speak about it, but those are the kinds of things that parties can provide, I think, are those unspeakable moments of sincerity that we remember on our deathbeds.
Yeah. To what extent do you think of that kind of party as a kind of retreat and a kind of surrender? And to what extent is it more of a, I guess, a an internal, like, outgoing, more projecting? Like, how do you see the balance between those two states in, for example, the context of Burning Man?
It's a great way to talk about the context of it because the Burning Man has these 10 principles, and if you're listening to this, Google the 10 principles because they're really cool. But it includes things like radical self-expression, like kind of community-minded. Participation is literally one of them, like no spectators, like everyone should participate. But a great party is sustained often by people who originally came to the party to escape, to be seen, to experience some sort of a catharsis, who realize how important it is. They get a little bit older and they start giving back. They start surrendering and creating the party without necessarily needing to have those experiences then. They're literally just in a place of complete service and surrender to the party. And Burning Man is sustained by tens of thousands of people who work for a really long time. And yes, they have fun and they do it on their own way, but they are literally providing and giving away and gifting an experience for other people. And I still love to do that, but I'd say so much of partying for me nowadays is in that latter category of if I go out, very rarely am I trying to see what I can get out of it, but I'm going out to I'm not going to use the word heal, but but to be present or to support other people in the way that other people supported me when I needed that place to go.
What do you think is, maybe for someone who's listening, the smallest shift that they can make to move towards a more fulfilled social life?
The smallest shift you can make to move to a more fulfilled social life is I'll reiterate this portals idea, which is that you become the energy of the questions you ask. So literally get out your phone, in your notes app, what do you want to feel more of in your social life? Is it connection? Is it belonging? Is it authenticity? Is it more introvert? Like, do you want more deeper conversations? Or do you want to feel more free and liberated? And write down questions. If you need to ask AI for this, go ahead and ask AI. Ask them what are questions to ask around this. And start bringing those questions to your family, your colleagues, your friends, your barista, and watch your social life shift pretty quickly from one in which you feel you are a spectator into one where you feel like you are a creator, a participant.
Well, thank you so much for that, Evan. I think you're really skilled at bringing out empathy, and your presence really does that.
Thank you. I had so many people that did this for me, and I really needed it because I would not be alive today, without people that allowed me to trauma dump and to share a lot of the ways that I felt like I would never belong and I was so broken that I didn't deserve to be in the world. I found people in the party scene that allowed me to see things differently.